This is MC Fireside Chats, a weekly show devoted to the outdoor hospitality industry, hosted by Brian Searle and Kara Sismadia. You'll hear from special guests that focus on topics to help your business succeed, all backed by Modern Campground, the most innovative news source in the industry.
To another episode of MC Fireside Chats. My name is Brian Searle with Insider Perks, here as always with Kara Sismadia from the Canadian Camping and RV Council, who is a little bit under the weather, so we hope you feel better, Kara. Probably nobody would have noticed that, but I just felt like you should do a sympathy play on the show, just in case you say something, later that you regret or something like that. You just blame it on the sickness. So,
okay, great.
Super glad to be here for our recurring episode, first of the month. We have our open discussion panel. We are missing a ton of people today. We've got Scott Foos is in an airplane somewhere. I think Mark Koep is coming back from the California show and said he was stuck in a blizzard somewhere. Sandy's traveling. I feel like somebody else is missing too that I'm forgetting. But, Mike and Christine are here. So I don't know what we're going to talk about today, but I have a filler topic in case you guys can't think of anything. So, but,
Well, I think we just need to let's start the show. Let's Kara, what do you think the over-under is of how many times Brian says the word AI? Right, I think we have to limit him to using it twice in an hour.
Yeah, twice would be nice.
And I can talk about it without saying it.
The thing that shall not be named.
Yeah. Anyway, what's on your guys' desk? What's come across in the last month that you guys are interested in talking about, that you've seen trends in the industry?
Yeah. Well, what have we seen CRR specifically? Obviously, as we talked last time, we launched our third-party management service, so we're pretty excited to offer that to the industry. So we've been going through a lot of inquiries and vetting properties and seeing what we can do to help properties enhance their NOI.
What do you? And I'm curious with that, right, Mike? And I don't want you to divulge any secrets about CRR, right? But there are so many of these management companies, and obviously we have a relationship with you, so we know more about what you do than a lot of the other management companies. But what do you feel has to be a difference maker when somebody's looking for management of a property? And obviously everybody's different. Everybody's looking for their own unique thing. But there's only so many ways to do accounting and financing and recommend construction of sites. And so what really has to set you apart, do you think, to be a difference maker in this industry?
Well, I mean, I think what you just said, there's only so many ways to do it. I don't know that that's true. I think there's many ways to do it, and how you approach it and your level of detail and competence and professionalism or analytics, those are all difference makers. So how do we approach things differently? I think we definitely look at things as experiential hospitality, right? We don't just look at it as a transactional, property. What is unique to the area? And as we know, our primary goal is we focus on revenue enhancement. We think that is the key to driving, obviously, owner profit, NOI, and asset value. So we focus on that considerably, whether it's through marketing, whether it's through experience, or whether through its activities, or whether it's through ancillary, as many ways as we can to drive revenue. And then to your point, how many ways, can you slice an egg? I think I just made up a new analogy. I've never heard that. But how many ways can you slice an egg, Kara? Let's
I
count
think
them.
You need to research this and tell us next month on the show.
But I think, our vision is evolving the industry for the modern world. What we found is, a lot of the campgrounds and resorts are a little bit antiquated, both in their systems and their approach, and, whether it's operational efficiencies or labor management or energy analytics, or, it doesn't mean that people aren't working hard and grinding. Absolutely. You can see people are passionate about this business, but, applying principles of analytics and, data and efficiency, that's what we do. We're a bunch of nerds, maybe not as much as Brian, but for the most part, we're a bunch of nerds that are about process improvement and everything we do. So I think that's how we look at it a little bit differently.
But just to clarify, I'm a geek.
My apologies.
Yeah.
My apologies.
I was a nerd when I was younger because I had glasses. That's the difference between nerds and geeks.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. Well, I've got glasses,
which
so
one has the pocket protector yet because I don't wear a shirt, so I haven't had the opportunity to test that. But
we'll call ourselves nerds. We're proud nerds. We are. Curiosity is one of our values, so we're definitely nerds.
I'm over here.
It was actually really interesting, and I don't want to talk about this too long, but I was watching a video about the different types of personalities who will be best set up to kind of win the future or whatever in all things technology. And I haven't said the word yet, by the way, but it was all things technology. And they were talking about generalists and polymaths, and I'd never heard that word before. But it's really interesting that I think it kind of fits a lot of my personality and how I know a little bit about everything, but I'm not a jack of all trades because I specialize in a couple things really well still. So it's interesting in how that kind of analogy when we were talking.
There you go. That you'll be successful in the future, Brian.
Yeah.
We're proud of
it was
you.
just one guy's YouTube video opinion, right? I don't.
If
Really
you
know.
use those things that won't be named, that'll probably help you as well.
Probably. But it is an interesting point about being a generalist when everybody has always told me, as long as I've grown up and what I've heard, from schooling and things, right? You have to pick one area to go into. You have to specialize in something specific and be the best you can at it. But maybe that doesn't fit everybody. And maybe that's not really a good strategy for the future when certain tools will be able to do one thing very well and leave you with no alternatives.
Well, I think, I grew up in this world as a general manager. And what I always told everybody is I generally manage. I know a lot about, a little or a little about a lot, whichever way you want to frame it. And I think, when you become a business leader, a business owner, an enterprise leader, how can you not, right? The successful folks absolutely know about insurance or law or business or finance or construction or guest service or operations. And if you can't, it's to your own detriment. So, I think, certainly, we all start off with our area of focus, whatever it might be. And then if you evolve, you have to evolve, then you got to pick up, some of those other skills along the way. So it's my thought anyway.
Yeah, it stuck out in my mind because one of the quotes they were saying was like, you don't want to mess with a guy like that who's having fun while he works, which was really interesting to me because that's what I posted on LinkedIn yesterday. Like, I'm legit having fun doing all of this. So
good.
It's good.
But anyway, geeks and nerds turned into that. But what else do we have?
Yeah.
Christine, what's going on in your world?
I guess I can tell you that the ever-increasing tide of employment lawsuits keeps coming in. Yeah. So be very careful for how you're managing your employees, how you're hiring your employees, and how you're firing your employees. Because I woke up this morning to yet another campground being sued on an employment matter. So they are quite prolific right now.
Now, here's an interesting, so you talked about, this is what we talked about last month, right? You went into depth about, we were talking about work campers and things like that. And you are a little bit quiet with your mic. Oh. But I mean, I can hear you, I can make it out, but you're a little bit quiet. And so just briefly recap this for us. So we don't need to deep dive into it like we did before, but briefly recap for those of us who weren't watching last month, right?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I'll speak a little louder instead of playing with technology. So generally, employment law can be all sorts of things. And what I'm talking about is there's a couple realms. So part of that could be like we're misclassifying the employee, we're calling them one thing when they're really another. So in some cases, people have independent contractors that aren't independent contractors. Right. You shouldn't have volunteers. You need to understand the difference regarding overtime, what an exempt and non-exempt employee is and what that really means. There's frequency of pay, like how often you have to pay people, what tax withholdings you have to do. And then what the other kind of side of the coin of that is that kind of how you're managing them. So it seems weird, but as the employer, you're responsible for how your employees treat each other. And if you don't handle situations where someone's treating somebody incorrectly, whether it's a sexual harassment issue or a discrimination issue or something like that, you're looped in as the employer because you have a duty to your employees to provide a safe environment. And if you're not, you can be looped in that. So there's a lot of places where you can get sued for employment issues, and they just keep going up. Like, I have never had so many employment law cases as I do right now.
Now, here's an interesting question, and I want to keep this serious, but also, what constitutes a safe environment? Like, if you run a glamping resort on the side of a volcano, can you be sued for that?
Well, it kind of depends. So there's physical safety, and then there's kind of emotional safety, I guess is the other way to talk about it.
So emotional is the more important, is what you're saying.
It's what more lawsuits are about, truly. Physical safety, you generally know what you're getting into. So, they chose to be employed at a job on the side of a volcano. So if they tried to come back later and be like, well, I applied to Volcano Resort, and their attraction is that it goes off every 5 minutes, and
That's actually a really cool attraction. You
Yeah,
have to very strategically position the tents, but
I'm not sure you'll find anyone to ensure that, but so that's like your physical safety, right? Also in that realm is, and unfortunately a discussion we've been having a lot, unfortunately hot button, is active shooter, because you kind of have to provide some safety in that realm as well. We could spend hours talking about active shooter policies, but that's kind of the physical safety piece. If I also get word that I have a particular guest that's like super aggressive or violent, I can even remember when I was a kid, this camper got really mad, and we had glass doors to our store. So his last retort was to punch the glass door that I was standing on the other side of. Very aggressive. So, I worked for my family, so a little different. But if I was just a regular employee, that employer would have a duty to kind of remove that guest because he threatened the physical safety of the individual. But the other piece of that, when it's not called emotional safety, but it's kind of that piece as well. If someone approaches you that another employee is making them uncomfortable, either passing, bad comments or physically trying to grab them or treating them differently or saying all sorts of things. I've had things from people harassing their coworkers with certain songs to try to get a message across. It sounds crazy, but given the lyrics in some of these songs and what they were referring to and a race of the individual or the religion of the individual, they kind of knew what they were being harassed for. If I, as an employer, get wind of that, I have to do something immediately. I also can't try to have blissful ignorance. I can't be so hands off that I'm like, I had no idea this was going on. That's not going to fly either. You got to check in with your business to make sure that your employees are treating each other correctly. That's a duty that you have that I can't just feign off on somebody else. So those are kind of the realms, and the laws have been shifting. For example, in New York, it used to be that the harassment or the discrimination had to be what we called pervasive and severe, but they actually changed it now that it has to be more than petty and trivial. So the standard has come down a lot. So before I could, knock out some of these lawsuits being like, oh, them making one comment, one time, isn't severe. But now if it's petty and trivial, that's a pretty low bar. So, I have a duty, even me as a law firm have a duty to provide an environment. So if I had a client who was super aggressive to one of my fellow attorneys here, I would have a duty as their employer to, kind of cease that relationship and protect them from that client.
Is there a danger in overreacting if you're an employee? Because I'm listening to you describe some of these employees who would sing songs or do gross things, right? I would fire them in 10 seconds. Is there? And I know you're shaking your head, Mike, but that would be my instinct.
He's right. He's generally there.
I'm not saying I would actually do it, but that would be what I would want to do. So is there a danger in overreacting?
No, actually, that's a better response than doing nothing. The alternative is some people have a demerit system and a complaint system. Usually firing is better. The only time termination can get you in trouble is if you had an employment contract. And that wasn't one of the reasons you could terminate somebody for, and then they try to sue you for the remaining term of the contract. So
why are you shaking your head, Mike? To be clear, I'm talking about firing the person who's doing the harassing.
Well, I first of all, I was chuckling because when you were just saying fire them immediately, I figured you'd have a specific tool do it for you via text. But I just, and 30 years in the hospitality industry, I've seen my share of associate issues. And, and Christine, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the very last thing you do is you make an immediate, decision without, conducting an investigation, and because you never know, what comes of it, and you have to be careful of retaliation, claims, or are they?
So
that's what I was asking.
Are they high
That was my
risk?
purpose.
What's the risk category that everybody belongs to? And it's
Well,
a mess.
It is, and you also have to treat everybody the same. So, for example, if I got word that Brian was making mean comments to Mike, but I knew Kara was also doing it, I couldn't fire Brian and not Kara because I wouldn't be treating them the same. So you have to treat everybody identically. You should investigate. I have had false complaints filed before, so you should do that. But if the result is that the complaint is valid, there should be some repercussion for doing that thing. So is it immediately termination? Maybe not. But is it like, here's your final warning, or, here's some kind of demerit system, whatever it is, there should be something. Because if the person who was the victim goes and reports you to, whether it's the EEOC or the state, Human Rights Board, your number one defense is going to be, I followed our procedure. This is a procedure I follow all the time. I looked into it. And, I did do something. Like, I didn't just ignore when Kara came and complained to me about Brian. That kind of
It's thing. Just a really interesting dynamic to me, right? Because obviously I would do an investigation because somebody could be retaliating or making up something that somebody's saying, right? It's different if it happened right in front of you. But it's a really interesting dynamic on how you react to that, right? Because let's say you do an investigation and you come to the conclusion that it wasn't that. But then the employee who feels like they were a victim, assuming they were being legit, is actually unhappy when they come to work now because they feel like you didn't side with them, and maybe they're still nervous around that employee. It can be a minefield.
It can, and like I say, nothing stops anyone from suing you. So as long as that person, we'll say it's Kara, is still within the time frame, which is usually, depending on what it is and where you are, could be between a year and 3 years. They could still bring that complaint, even if I had done everything correctly and came up with the conclusion that there was nothing actionable there. So I would just want to make sure that before any of these situations happen, I had some kind of internal policy and procedure that, this manager is the one who does those investigations every time. So that way, if I had to defend myself, I could be like, look, Mike knows what he's doing. He's done this every time. This is the procedure. Report it to Mike. He did this investigation. This is what we uncovered. Because as people have heard me say forever, like, nothing stops anyone from suing you. You just make it go way quicker. So that would kind of be the thing. The other thing Mike touched on, which is also super important, is if they could tie it to something else that you did wrong, termination is a little scary. So, like, if Brian was harassing Mike, and I'm like, cool, I'm going to remove that. But I knew also that Kara had been harassing Brian for something, and
all the time it happens
because of something, and he could maybe make a claim that I didn't fire him because of him harassing Mike, but I really fired him because of these discriminatory things, that were happening on the other side. So it's always good to keep really good records about employee kind of behavior. So, and just even if it's an email that you can temporarily send to yourself or someone else, there was this incident, got it here. So that way I could show that I fired them because of X and not what they're alleging, which is Y. So, that is really important. We have what we call in the United States anyway, protected characteristics, which can be race, religion, gender identity, sexual preference, all these sorts of things, national origin. And you would never want them to be able to tie to that. The other new one that keeps cropping up everywhere is as marijuana is legalized, a lot of these laws say you can't penalize people for recreational marijuana use.
That's interesting. But that's interesting.
Yeah. So when it first rolled out in New York, so a couple, 2 summers ago, there was a case where this employee got hurt on the job. And pursuant to this employer's internal policy, when someone got hurt because of workers' comp, they used to immediately send them for drug testing. And one of the drugs they tested for was marijuana. And in New York, for example, you can no longer test for that because it stays in your system so long that the time frame in which they would still pop a positive versus them working doesn't line up anymore. So they blanket fired them because they tested positive for marijuana, and they actually had to undo that whole termination, pay the person for the time period they were fired, and rehire them because that was no longer something they could fire them for. They tried to say afterwards that they fired them because he wasn't a great employee and stuff like that, but that wasn't the picture they painted. So you have to kind of like, if you were not in the thick of it, if someone was looking on the outside, which link would they draw to? Was it that you fired them for their marijuana usage, or was it you fired them because they were a bad employee? And if it's enough that you can establish a causal link between the bad thing you shouldn't fire them for, you're going to have a bit of a battle. So
a lot of this is really fascinating to me because I've always been like kind of on the I don't think I've ever drug tested an employee or alcohol tested an employee. Like my line, and it's not, and I don't even know what's really stated in the employee handbook, but my line is like, as long as it doesn't impact your performance when you're working for me, do whatever you want. I don't want to know. I don't care. Like, I know, Mike, I'm just telling you, like, I'm not saying I'm encouraging the activity, or if I knew about it, I wouldn't consider thoughtfully what would, right? But I don't like what you do in your personal time. If it is not impacting work or your performance or your relationship with your colleagues or anything that I would normally oversee, then I think you should have a little bit of flexibility. Not to do things that are illegal, but you should have flexibility.
Employers can choose within certain realms what they want to do. But again, whatever policy or procedure you put in, you better be enforcing that against everybody. So, I have some people who are like, man, I really like Mike though, so Mike gets a pass, but Kara, on the other hand, you can't.
Well, and I know it's different, Mike. Like, and I want you to explain, please, why you're shaking your head. But I know it's different when you're like guiding RVs into sites, and then they can prove that, right? So like all my employees are remote and they work from home, so it's definitely different for me.
Absolutely, yeah. The operating heavy equipment, all those things are huge factors.
So just like I'm only speaking from myself and my perspective, right? So, but please expand on it, Mike, if you have something to say.
Well, I'm
an idiot. I'm happy to listen.
It's and I fall in the Christine world where we mitigate risk, right? And so when I hear you say things like what you do on your own, like we wouldn't even say that, right? We have a handbook.
I would never say that. I'm just saying that.
We just did. Christine's going to have to represent.
I said it out loud, but I did qualify and say that's not in my employee handbook, and I don't like telling people.
Well, that's why I shook my head, because you did say it out loud. Yeah. So you asked, but no, I mean that's why we have in the associate handbook we have very clear, guidelines about and we've had both. I've worked for companies that require the drug testing after an incident like Christine, and we had a lot of discussions about our own handbook about do we want to require drug testing, and so we currently don't. Just anybody's curious, but we do have strict alcohol and drug policy guidelines, and we've had I used to work in Denver. And that was, I think, the first city that passed recreational drug use, and so we had multiple properties there, and we had to look at revising our drug policy, and we're going years ago, right? Maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we removed it from our testing criteria, and there was a big discussion, right? And it will continue to be a big discussion, about that, and that's. Like you said, it's a little bit of a nebulous, ambiguous, especially since it varies from state to state, and so.
Well, the problem can be magnified with operators whose staff often lives on site. Like if you have work campers living on site, now you have this kind of blurred line around, what's your time and what's business time, and when are you representing?
Boy, that's a minefield.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, besides all of that, like if we're going to get into other piece of it, it's, there's not to flag, if any work campers are listening now, but not to flag for a lot of people, but, a lot of people have the work campers as their easy security option, right? They pass them that phone call and are like, hey, if anybody calls, you'll handle it, right? And, technically then we put them on what we call on-call hours. So if they're not allowed to leave the property because they're the ones, we technically should be paying them for every hour they're in possession of that security phone, which would accrue some really fun overtime hours for most people, but they aren't usually. They're like, oh, no one ever calls that phone, so I don't pay them. But, they could. I was just at the New York spring conference meetings last week, and I had one woman reach out to me and said that she has no work campers anymore because she got turned into the Department of Labor 5 times. So, it's
wow.
You're not wrong, but you're also, just to say it, like, because I used to work for a cable company and we used to be on call to do outages and things like that, right? And so we were on call during the Super Bowl and we couldn't drink during the Super Bowl because you might get called out and you might have to go up a ladder and so it's the same thing with having that phone, right?
Yeah, if it inhibits you such that you couldn't do whatever you wanted with your life, then you're still a working hour at that point and should be paid for it. So, it's crazy, and I'll keep saying it because I think people need to know it. When we all got locked in our homes in 2020, we all started looking at the internet a lot more and connecting on forums and things like that. And it also caused people to share a lot of information. And disgruntled employees are sharing this information. They'll be like, oh, my manager Mike sent me this thing. And everyone will be like, oh, yeah, you could totally sue them for this. And do they do this? Because if not, you should file a complaint on them.
This is why we have Mike on the show, by the way. So,
so I can beat them up. But they're not wrong is the problem, is that, even though they might be a little bombastic in what they think they'll recover from that, they're not wrong in their claims, and I hate a pro se client because the judges, do deference to them because they're navigating it by themselves and stuff, and there's no reasonable party to negotiate with. But it happens, and they keep bringing these, and they're getting payouts, and some of that's just the economy of doing business, but like it's not great. It's not going away. So like we used to be able to do interesting operational practices 10, 20 years ago, but that's not the environment we're in anymore. People are paying attention to camping, which is great in a lot of aspects, but it also means that they're paying attention to us for these lawsuits too.
Well, let's flip this around, Mike. Like, I know culture is a big thing at CRR, right? And so what are some of the ways that you feel people can head some of these things off before they happen?
Yeah, and it's funny you say that. I was thinking about that as Christine's talking about it. How do you mitigate these opportunities? And no one's immune, right? I mean, it happens if you're top workplace in the country. You're still going to have an incident or two. But I think we conduct an associate survey a couple of times a year. And we take those seriously, and we create action plans, and we listen to their feedback, and we take actions on that. So I think that's part of it. Also, if you ever have to defend yourself, to Christine's point, if you can demonstrate that we take feedback seriously, here are the things we've done, here's an example of our behaviors, in the risk world, it's a defensible argument, but just in a general culture creating world, if your associates believe you listen, in general, you're going to lessen, the feeling of bitterness or cynicism, towards your organization. If you are consistent, Christine mentioned this a couple of times. I think if you're consistent in your, administration of policy, procedure, hiring, recruiting, promotion, coaching and counseling, performance management, etc. That will go a long way too. There's nothing worse than when somebody can call out 5 times and they don't get addressed, and somebody calls out once and they get a write-up, right? People, the associates talk, right? Well, why'd they get a write-up, or they didn't and I did, etc. So you really got to be consistent, in your policy administration.
You're right about the feedback though, and I don't want to interrupt you. I want you to continue, but you're right about the feedback. Like, we use this in Slack, which automates all kinds of surveys on how you're doing and what you're feeling, and some of it's anonymous and some of it's public, and so you can set up all these custom templates to do agile surveys and daily syncs and team bonding and team well-being and how's your mental health, and all this stuff goes out all over our Slack almost every day in different ways. Notice
the name in the top left.
Geekbot, I know, not Nerdbot.
Yeah, not Nerdbot, but Geekbot. And I think, and listen, we, as a startup company, certainly we've had our own share of hiccups in how we've had some turnover, in certain areas at times, as we've kind of find our way. But, what I think we try and land on always is hire for our values. So we don't necessarily hire for technical experience, but we're looking, positivity is one of our values, right? We want no negativity, gossip, soap opera stuff occurring. And, if you land on that, you're going to reduce and you can never predict it perfectly, right? You don't know who somebody is.
75% of it out before it even begins.
Sure. Yep. But if they don't resonate right with you in the beginning, you've probably got antenna up for a reason. So, if you're hiring for your values that, you're going to, to your point, filter out, hopefully, less propensity to hire, a bad egg. So it's a two-part relationship, right? You want to hire the right associate, because there's nothing to do. You could never convince, a Celtics fan to be a Lakers fan, right? It's impossible, right? And so if you hire a bad associate, there's nothing you can do sometimes if they think a particular way. But then the company also has the obligation to administer consistently, as we've talked about. So it is a two-part relationship, to get that success formula, to try and create that environment. We got, it's interesting because Chris or Kara had mentioned operations. We just our latest associate survey was above, was in the mid 90s, which is an excellent score. But we've there's not as many operations people in the census survey as there will be when we have the other 3 resorts open in the next couple months, right? And I fully expect that score will go down, just because the nature of operations versus a at home there's a lot more dissatisfiers, right? You can see your fellow associates not pulling their weight, being treated differently. I'm happy about this. I don't have the right tools and supplies to do that. And so we should still have a good solid score, probably in mid-high 80s, but based on certainly our experience in the hospitality industry, operations businesses are just they're a grind, and it's hard to be perfect. You can only hope to be excellent, really, in any circumstance.
Yeah, I mean, it's and Gary Vee originally said this, I think, but I've picked it up for several years that hiring is guessing and firing is knowing. But that part, like when you're talking to this, like I irritate Kendra all the time, who does my HR, because I'll interview somebody and I'll just hire them immediately, because and to be clear, I've made mistakes, but I've learned over the years, and I've only hired 2 people that I can't even say I regret hiring them, but that didn't turn out to be the same personality I thought they were, or the same work ethic I thought they were. But most people, I don't know, it's interesting how you can refine it over the years, especially, I mean, I'm sure you understand this a little bit, Mike, being in the industry for so long, you learn kind of what to look for.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the real challenge is if you're not always the hiring manager, right? And in a larger company, if you're relying on other people, and so I've got very good intuition. My staff, I've got very good antenna, right? I can usually get a sense of a person. I talk to them, but not everybody's got that antenna, and so if somebody else is interviewing and making a decision, you got to trust that their antenna is good, and they've got the particular interview criteria that they're looking at. They're getting to the heart of it.
I think you can dampen that, right? Like if you're the person who hired that person and they turned out exactly how you thought, then those people probably have some kind of emotional intelligence that would lend itself to, right? Not, again, yes, it's more of a chance if it's not you, but
yeah, I mean, it's just, it's a different level, right? And so yes, maybe you've only had two regrets, but again, the larger company you have, and it's cascades in a larger organization, right? If you got a corporate, structure, and then you got properties, and I don't see every, housekeeper that we hire, right? I never would.
Yeah, and that's different. That's definitely difficult across multiple locations and in person and all that stuff.
So you're relying on that general manager. Sorry, Kara. You're relying on that general manager to make that good hiring decision, and make those good, HR decisions so that it doesn't get to Christine, right? And that's the real trick. Go ahead, Kara. I'm sorry.
I'm terrified of it. Go ahead, Kara, and then I'll talk. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, in my experience, I obviously had a much smaller team, but it often felt almost like a house of cards for me, where if one thing anywhere in the team piece came out, sometimes the whole thing would crumble down. You really not only are trying to find individuals who have the values and things that you're looking for, but then you also have to kind of manage all these interconnected relationships and putting people in the right spot with the right colleague. It's for me, it was the biggest puzzle piece that I was constantly stressing about and shuffling in those days of my life.
I'm terrified of when I get big enough that I can't have those personal, like I can't be the one to hire. I'm terrified. I'm at 19, 20 now, I think, something like that. I just hired 3 more people in the last week, but I'm terrified of that. I still have one-on-ones with my team once a month. Every single person gets 15 minutes once a month directly with me in my calendar. And I'm terrified of the day I won't be able to do that anymore.
Yeah,
it's gonna happen.
I know,
yeah.
but
and hopefully you have, and I work with a previous company who I started with, and they were smaller, and then they grew to, $1 billion company, and culture changes every time you add one person, right? And as you grow, things happen, and scale changes, and that's things. I talked to my team. I said the thing that I want to protect against is how do we keep our integrity to our values, right? Our culture is absolutely going to change. You can't help it when you add another person, but how do you
that
keep
doesn't
the
mean it
integrity
has to
to your
change for the
values?
worse. It just means that's
No,
change.
It's going to evolve, adapt, modify, however. But if whether you're at 75 associates or 750 associates, can you still, because when you're at the larger level, it's impossible to touch every associate, right? It's impossible to have influence over every decision. And so hopefully you've trained well enough, you've made enough good hiring decisions, you have enough structure that it can be consistent. Which seems like a hallmark word, several times today.
Ultimately, and part of that I've explained terrifies me, but the other part is like everything in my company is my fault. No matter how if I have 750 employees and I hired a manager and then that manager turned around and hired somebody that didn't reflect the company values, that's my fault. Because I either didn't
agree with that
manager right, or I didn't explain my expectations or the values that we should seek in employees, and I'm not saying it literally is, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, you take responsibility for it, and 100% agree with that, right? You're the owner and director, right? So everything is your fault, or a degree of that. So
no, you're right.
No, I agree.
That's how I approach life. Yep. And I think I'm happier because of it. But I wasn't always that way.
Going back, let's move on from misery of employee lawsuits for a second. I want to go back to the tool that should not be named. And I'd really, now I would like to see a generated image of glamping units on the side of a volcano. So I really want to see what that would look like.
So this is interesting. I'll show you this. So what you guys talk while I'm doing this, but I will. So I was showing Kara this before I generated my background. So like I turned, let me see, I gotta share this tab. I actually
is that couch a generated background, or is that really your living room?
No, this is really my living room, because Restream apparently doesn't do, it's not even my living room. It's my tiny office with my extra couch in it is what it is.
I gotcha.
But so I trained GPT-4 here on how to understand how to generate prompts in Midjourney, which is what we use for our AI art generation. So this is an example of the advanced things you can do with it, and nobody understands how to play with it, right? But so I trained it on all of Midjourney, and their entire guide I just copied and pasted from their website on how to take advantage of the new version 5 or whatever. And then I trained it on example prompts that people got from the community, like not images I created, but images that were great that I liked, right? And so now I can come down here and say, great, I want you to act as a professional photographer because you understand Midjourney. And then I can just literally type a prompt. What I want you to create is a glamping resort on the side of a volcano. And all I have to do is type that, and it will understand and write me this rich descriptive prompt that I can use in Midjourney.
No, I want an image, right? I want an image.
Get you an image. I got to generate the prompt for the image first.
And I want it to be a cloudy day with a little bit of sunshine poking through. I want the side of the volcano to be sheer cliffs.
Okay, what do you want? Tell me right now.
I'd like
on the side of a volcano. What is it?
On a cloudy day with the sun peeking through, with a steep grade on the volcano and a winding road all the way from the base up and around the volcano to get to the resort.
Do you own this property?
I can't type. A steep grade on the volcano with a winding road. What?
Up and around the mountain to get to the resort from the base. No, Christine, because nobody would insure it.
That's what I thought.
That look good? Flaming resort on the side of a volcano on a cloudy day with the sun peeking through a steep grade on the volcano with a winding road to get to the resort from the base of the mountain. All right.
Sure.
Now it's going to write a better prompt than that based on that information. And then I'm going to take this and put it in Discord and Midjourney, and we'll get an image. But this is an idea of some of the advanced things that you can do with it, right? Everybody just goes and types in 2 words because that's what we've been trained to do in 24 years on Google. So it's really.
I didn't type in 2 words. I gave you some good description.
Yeah.
You did.
Yeah. I haven't. And see, I did this to myself. Right? I brought this back up. This is my own fault. So
I still haven't mentioned the word. So
it's still not going anywhere. If anything, it's going to become more prolific. So it's one of my law clerks came to me the other day in a panic asking, do you think I'm going to still have a job? And I was like, it's going to be a while before it replaces you. So
and then the regulation, etc. But where's our image? That's what I really want to see. An image.
Go into Discord so you can actually see it generate in real time.
Clearly, the tool that should not be named is slow.
So slow. Can you imagine?
Well, I couldn't paint it any quicker, so I guess there's that.
It'll take a minute. It takes a minute or 2 to generate now, but
those are. Is that because the user census is a lot bigger, or just because it's what? I
don't know. This is the brand new one they just released a week and a half ago for Midjourney version 5, so it's a little bit slower because of that. But compared to everything, this is still, we're complaining about being slow. This would have taken months to conceptualize and do, even 6 months ago.
Yeah, true. After I see the images, I'm going to hop off so I got another call. But now I have to see the results of your work.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a name for yours that's not campy, or is it just ChatGPT?
Oh, for what? This Midjourney thing?
Well, yeah, you don't call it Rodolfo. Hey, let's put that in Rodolfo and see who comes back, or
no, this isn't my bot. I didn't code this. This is just me.
Mike, while we wait, do you feel like talking about camping? How's things going with camping?
We can. There's the images though. They're done. I don't know if there's a little bit of a winding road here.
Oh, I can't see your screen.
Oh, you can't see my screen? Why not?
Nope.
Oh, sorry. Here we go. I forgot I had to toggle it on. I thought I was sharing the whole time. Sorry.
It's so tiny.
You gotta make it bigger.
Well, I can make it bigger when you tell me. I don't know if I can make it. Can I do this? Orientation not available. I don't know. If you pick one that you want, I can blow up one of these images.
I can't see. Take the far left corner.
Yeah, the top left corner.
All right, here. Let me.
So since no one will insure it and we can't actually build it, who's gonna invest in building this VR resort to visit with your VR headset?
Somebody will, for sure. Probably AI will. You should see the text to stuff. I was playing with text to video, which is going to come out in weeks. It already is, but it's going to come out really good in weeks. I played with a platform that's text to app, so you can design and can't code the app, but you could with ChatGPT. But in one step, you can say what you want, and it'll design you an entire app for your phone. So eventually, it's going to be that good. So here's the first one. You like this, Mike?
Not quite what I envisioned, but yeah. Yeah.
Right, so that's the first one. Here's the second one.
Where is this volcano? Yeah, Honduras?
Right.
Here's the third one. I don't know. We didn't specify where the volcano was. You have to be descriptive.
I didn't realize there was so much grass in a volcano and in jungles.
Maybe it is dormant volcano. You didn't ask whether you wanted an active volcano.
True. I should have said active volcano. That's really what I was thinking. Fire coming down the side.
Yeah.
Ash. Road right here.
Ash. Yeah.
Still, you could very easily be this is real. This looks real. So
yeah, it's fascinating.
It's awesome. Yeah. No, answer to your question, Kara. On our website, for example, our videos are AI generated. So if you didn't know, you wouldn't know really. Right. They're pretty cool. And Campy, we're in the very, very, very early stages. We actually have a call tomorrow to talk about analytics and what's it doing, and evolve. So the way I kind of explain it to people is, when we first rolled it out, it's in kindergarten, right? Yeah. And then we got teach it and learn it, and then a couple weeks later it's then in middle school, and then a couple weeks later it's in high school, and right now I think, my opinion is it's in college, right? It's still doing well, hasn't graduated yet, and so it's certainly, we're tweaking it, and it's fun, and so I would say 80% of the time the answers are very, 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 very good, very effective. And the other 20% of the time it's got to be clarified, or they're not perfect or clear. And then obviously the ultimate part, is it cool? Who cares, right? Maybe the geek nerds care, but from a business owner standpoint, why do we want it, right? How do you monetize it? That's, I think, mine and Brian's ultimate goal is, in a couple months we understand, what level of efficiency does it provide, so that it, chases out Christine's law clerks. But could it be more efficient, so that your guest service representatives are spending more time with your guest, that your reservationists are fully focused on being able to book more business because they don't have to field questions. And so that's what I think we're trying to identify in the first 90, 120 days is, how many chats, how many inquiries, how much time do we think it's saved? And then, putting a value to that to understand, is it, driving either productivity or revenue? That's to me, that's the number one outcome of it, other than just being cool.
And we know it is already. Like, the question is what does that growth trajectory look like? That's what interests me, because right now I think a lot of people don't want to interact with chatbots because they think they suck. For the last 5 or 6 years, they have sucked. Mm-hmm. And so it's going to be interesting to me. The more of these pop up on all these different sites, like Delta will add one, and Coca-Cola, and all the airlines, and all the, like, Marriott, the more people get used to, these don't suck anymore. What is that chat volume then? I feel like it's going to go really fast.
I'm curious to know, Christine, from your perspective, do you foresee any potential hurdles with concerns around, providing wrong answers and maybe not the best information on these channels? Bye, Mike. Thank you.
See you guys.
Bye. Yeah, so I actually think it's really interesting. Someone's going to be the test case. There's two venues where I see issues. One is, right now we're utilizing other things. So I know if you're building something separately, the license to use it'll be interesting, because a lot of people are using free programs, and right now they just kind of give you the stuff. But I see an eventuality where we monetize that. And the other one would be, if you answered the phone for me as my employee and gave bad information, I'd be held liable for that because you're my agent.
Yeah.
Are we going to say that these chats are the agents of these businesses? I could see someone saying that. They, if they relied on that information and it was incorrect to their detriment, someone's going to test it. I don't want to be it, but I think someone's going to, but I don't know what that'll look like.
That's part of the legal framework that we need from people like you, Christine, right? Like, we have this generic thing on the bottom of Verde of all of our client, but I'm just pulling up Verde, right? Because we were just talking about it. Hold on. Well, I can't find it now. But anyway, we have terms and conditions that are somewhere that I'll find. I just don't know the link to it, but I'll find it in a second. But we have terms and conditions we read.
You definitely can't find it.
Yeah, that's not a problem at all that we can't find it. The AI probably took it down.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have, I can't find it right now, but we have it on our Insider Perks website and all that kind of stuff. Maybe it's actually there.
Yeah, I mean, part of that is going to be, like, I imagine, when we talk about the validity of e-signatures, for example, on like documents, we talked about that they have to have been kind of stopped such that they had to acknowledge in some fashion. So I can't generally just say, they agreed to this waiver because I posted on my website. I have to have collected something, either made them hit a button or wrote in their initials. So I could foresee something like, I know right now when a chat window pops up, sometimes you have to put your name in or whatever to use it. I could see something like, when they put their name in, they're agreeing to link to this disclaimer, and they can't talk to that bot until they put their name in saying they agree to that. Maybe that'll do it. Again, like, we are what we call, at least in this part of the world, a common law system. So people are going to have to test it out, and until there are laws or cases.
Well, it's going to be years before that happens, right? But this is the best we can do right now. Is terms and conditions that are written like this, and then they're down here on the bottom of every chat, and then you disclose like, I'm an AI, I'm an AI, I'm an AI. Like,
yeah, I would honestly, if I was thinking about this, maybe this isn't doable, but I remember using, so like our legal software, if I want to use their chat feature first, I have to fill out like a little form before it opens the box where I put my name in and things like that, which stops me from using it before I do that. And I think probably they want some internal record. It's not for liability at this point. But I could see that kind of being the norm for these, that it forced them, whether they actually read the terms or not, but force them to read them or say that they read them before they chat with the AI. Maybe that's a solution because we slowed them down. I literally can't force you to read a contract, even if I print it out and put it in front of your face. But if I did all of the things possible to delay you such that you were given opportunity and things like that, I think it would be much stronger than I had to, of my own initiative, click this separate link to get to that. So I don't know. It will be interesting. You're right. I try to get to a real representative as quickly as possible most of the time and avoid all sorts of
chatbots aren't helpful because the menu systems on the phone aren't helpful, but they're about to be.
Yeah, I mean, I would love that.
Much more helpful. Like, imagine the scenario where you call the customer service representative on the phone and you're bounced between 7 departments because they're all specialized in their department and only told you can answer a question. But the AI will know the whole company.
Yeah.
Integrate with their systems and be able to, like, now.
Yeah, if it even alleviated the whole time that I spend on phones, I'd really appreciate it. But I mean, I'm excited for what technology will add instead of what it takes away. Even in my profession, I know there's a lot of squirmy worms about it. People always get nervous whenever a new thing comes out. But, if we were so resistant to technology, I'd still have to go drive down to the courthouse library to look up things instead of being able to use a case software, So, like, there's always benefits. And I was actually talking to another attorney in another state recently about how she was using even just the free version of ChatGPT to kind of help her narrow down her research. So, she was like, well, it first gave me things from pre-2018 when the law changed in 2018. So then I had to educate it. No, only give me things post-2018. So, like, there's still a knowledge piece, just how, like, we talked, you, like, have to know enough to ask the right question. But she said, like, the search terms she would have used were so broad that even with, the traditional terms and connectors,
because that goes back to the thing we've been trained in Google to type in 2 words.
That it was hard to get the right result. So, like,
but that's going to change so fast. Like this is a company, and I'm not going to play this whole video, but this is a company that does customer-led AI on the phone already. Now listen to how real this sounds.
Hi, I was expecting a package today, but I was out and it wasn't delivered. I have a concierge. Can you contact the driver and let him know to leave it with them next time?
I'm afraid we can't deliver your parcel to reception. It's for security reasons. Would you like to rearrange your delivery for another day?
That is kind of creepy.
I'm calling to make an appointment with Dr. Garcia. My name is Siobhan Murphy.
And it understands. You see what it's understanding and pulling from a database?
Okay, I've got your records here. Can I just confirm your date of birth, please?
It's the 20th of March, 1993.
That's great. Okay, there's an appointment on July 13th. Does that work for you?
And that's available today. Like, you can go buy this right now.
That is pretty great. I mean, adapt. I think it's so helpful. I mean, honestly, even look, I actually was having this conversation with one of our paralegals recently who has never actually been camping herself. And she's like, how do people keep track of all this stuff? I was like, oh, we have software now. But I was like, pause on that.
Geeks like me.
when you first, when we first even just took reservations for campgrounds, we were doing it in paper. Like you had a big paper like chart with paper, and like I can't even imagine doing that now. But but I'm sure I say that, but I do know there are still some campgrounds now who are resistant to adopting reservation software. I have talked to them, but I get it, but like embracing change is cool. Like I said, I never want to be the test case. I'll let most people ferret out what the problems are. There's already been some unauthorized practice of law with people trying to use AI to help them be an attorney. And there still has to be an actual attorney there. So, we'll figure out how that works in our system, but, embrace it. Like when we had our first 2 campgrounds, the idea of text messaging your guests updates in real as things were happening was I never would have imagined. And now that's just
that's the thing is this is a shortcut, right? And the more you like, this is why I'm so kind of I'm obsessed with it, let's be fair, but like this is why I'm so pushing it so hard with people, is because this is happening at a speed that we have never seen anything happen in the history of the universe, and it is only going to get faster every single day. And you can use, like at a law firm, you can use this to speed up your processes. I was talking to a patent attorney yesterday about something that I might invent. And last week I was talking to my accountant, and we were just looking about deductions. And because I have such a complex, like I have 2 US businesses and a Canadian business, and then one I own personally. And I was typing in GPT-4, like, what are some uncommon deductions that would work for this, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, oh, I didn't think about that. She knew it, but it shortcutted her response to be able to think about those different things. And it's not like I never want to cut her out of the loop, but if we can help people use these things, then it makes them more efficient. It sometimes can increase their margins, help them serve more people better. I think the people that are going to win initially are the people who adopt this, the lawyers who are willing to adopt this tech, the accountants who are willing to, because I was telling my patent lawyer the same thing yesterday. I said, at some point, your customers are going to look at you and be like, well, my friend Johnny uses the firm across the way, and he got his document back in an hour and a half. How come it took you 2.5 weeks? And then they're going to leave your firm.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, again, embrace technology. Don't shy away from it. There's going to be bugs. You don't have to be the first adopter, but I would be an early adopter. I mean, I've been watching for law firms in particular, there's an AI that a firm in London has adopted across all their offices that I've definitely put myself on the wait list to learn more about it because I'm curious. And like, frankly, not that I'm trying to chase away business, but I understand, as with every piece of it, that we're merely line items in the overall picture, right? And if I can do it quicker for them, because all I sell is my time, then they have more money to buy another cabin or, invest in some cool feature that drives more people to their park, or throw more money at Brian so he can do a better job on their website or something, whatever it is. So like, I think that's okay. It's going to change, and there will be different veins for different people. And I guess a good way to wrap up this whole thing, you started today by talking about being a generalist and things like that. And what I had thought of and what popped in my head at the time is I work at what I call a general practice law firm, which means we don't only do one type of thing. Like I don't only do litigation. I don't only do transactional. So a lot of people would argue, because you're a generalist, you're not great at any specific thing. But where I think the specificity for me is like an industry, right? Like I'm very knowledgeable about how those things impact outdoor hospitality. I don't know how they impact, running a pest company or something like that, but I know what that means for a campground. And I think by being able to utilize this stuff to marry with your knowledge, it will help people be generalists. And, people feel comfort in working with people they know. So if they can come to me for more things than they could before, because I'm willing to adopt technology, I think that's just kind of a win for everybody and us generalists, if you will.
Yeah, and I think and I've got this up here for a reason, right? And I know we don't have a lot of time to touch on it, but this is about to be the most fundamental shift that you've ever seen in your life, right here with AI. This is, if you haven't seen this yet, and I have beta access to it, it's not publicly available. These are ChatGPT plugins. They literally last week, or I think a week and a half ago, maybe announced it. And there's only 8 apps in here right now. These ones, or maybe there's a little bit more. Wolfram Alpha, Speak, Open Table, whatever. But this is the new app store. There's literally no reason to have an app in the app store unless you're playing a game or doing something that this is the new interface. So what this can do now is you can build an app for this, just like Instacart and Expedia has, and you can talk to ChatGPT in natural language right here, and you can select these plugins, and it will look for real-time prices on Expedia. It will be able to book restaurant reservations for you by just saying book a table. It will connect to your Open Table account and make you a reservation. You can ask it for a vegan meal plan and the ingredients that you need, and it will put the items in your Instacart cart, and it will order them for you. This is it right here. You're looking at the website that you're going to come to for 92% of things. This is it.
Well, wouldn't it be cool if our campground reservation companies link into that so people could use that?
I've already proposed it to one. I'm just waiting for them to let me do it because we have developer access to build it.
Nice. Yeah, I don't know. I'm excited, but I'm always excited. So, I always want to see the new thing that happens. I might be doom and gloom when I tell people about business operations, but, willing to adopt new things, I'm for it. And you and I have had conversations. I'd rather stuff be accessible to people. So if this is a way for more people to get the help they need, then let's go for it.
I mean, you can chain them all together too. You can say, come up with a meal plan and then book me a flight to do and it'll do it all in 3 steps right in a row.
Well, I guess I'm coming to see you guys and we're going out to eat. So I can use it for traveling to Canada and booking us a restaurant. So.
Yeah, it's an interesting world we live in. So I know I sound paranoid and like I'm moving too fast and that nobody understands what I'm talking about, but I can barely keep up with this stuff.
Yeah.
So,
awesome.
Anyway. Thank you guys. I appreciate you joining us for another episode of MC Fireside Chats. Did we never say the word the whole episode?
I don't think so.
I have no idea. But either way, we're getting there. We put it up on the screen enough. So
Put it up. Okay. Thank you guys. Take care. Have a good week.
Thanks, guys. Chat soon.
Thanks for watching this episode of MC Fireside Chats, hosted by Brian Searle and Kara Sismadia. Have a suggestion for a future show or want to see your campground or company as part of an episode? Email us at hello@moderncampground.com. Join us next week for another episode. And don't miss the latest outdoor hospitality news and commentary from around the world at moderncampground.com.